Merry Christmas, everyone. Hi everyone, my name's Chloe, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for being here today. Today's video is day number 25 of BOOKMAS. We did it, we got here. It is the last day. I've been posting a new video every day up to and including today, which is Christmas Day. So Merry Christmas everybody. I hope you're all having a lovely day, however that looks for you. Just Merry Christmas, I can't say it enough times. And for today's video from me, I thought I would sit next to one of my many Christmas trees. This is the one in my bedroom. It's not looking the best from this angle, it's just the bottom of it. But I thought I would sit all comfy cozy by the Christmas tree and just talk about some of the books that I absolutely love this year. So I've picked 10 of my favourite books. Most of these are going to be of no surprise to anyone who've watched my channel, but I am going to rank them from sort of 10 to 1, just looking at which books I really loved this year and getting to talk about them a bit more, because we all haven't heard me talk about them enough on this channel, have we? So basically, to figure out this list, what I did is I went on my spreadsheet, which is used in the core pile system, and sort of looked at all the ratings I gave the books. Quite a few of these had the same ratings, but then I just kind of took my emotions into account as well and put them in order of what I would genuinely call my favourite. So obviously this is completely subjective. I generally do give my ratings based on like gut reactions and feelings rather than necessarily on sort of critical merit, but I do think I actually have some really good books on here as well. So let's stop rambling and let's just talk you through the list. So my number 10 favourite book that I read this year is Like a Love Story by Abdul Nazemian. I will talk about this book forever because I don't hear enough people talking about it and I want more people to know about it. It is set in the late 1980s in New York during the AIDS crisis. It's about sort of 3 friends living through that. You've got the main character who's from an Iranian family and he's worried about sort of being out and gay to his family in general, and he's also really worried because all the things he sees about being gay on the news are about people dying of AIDS, and it's really terrifying for him. So he ends up starting a relationship with a girl, but then quickly realizes that actually he has feelings for their other best friend who is male, and it's just such a beautiful story. It really got to me in places. The ending had this sort of punch to it that I wasn't expecting, and I just really love this book, and I'm really excited to read anything that this author does next. I just mentioned him on my anticipated releases because he does have a new book coming out next year, and I just really love this. I've had it sat on my shelves for a while now, and I'm so glad that I finally got around to reading it this year. Speaking of books that have been on my shelf for a while, in at number 9 we have Vengeful by V. Schwab. So this is the second book in the Villains series. I will give you a synopsis of the first one because I can't tell you much about the second one without spoiling a lot, but basically it's set in a world where there are these people called Extraordinaries who have sort of superpowers. Think like the X-Men, where they all have completely different types of powers, and it's about these 2 main characters who start doing experiments to figure out how these Extraordinaries are created. They realise it's done through near-death experiences, but then within their experiments things quickly go awry, and basically at the beginning of the first book, one of the characters has just got out of prison and he is wanting to track down the other one because he blames him for the reason why he went to prison. And it's full of sort of morally grey characters. It's told in like a non-linear fashion as well. There are multiple timelines that all kind of jump around within this, and it's just crafted in the exact way that I love a book to be crafted. I love that type of perspective where it's all kind of figuring it out and plotting it all together, and I really love the characters in this. Nobody is wholly good and nobody is wholly bad, but you still have your sort of your favourites that you're rooting for as well, and this was just a really good sequel. It gave me sort of that broader image of the world. There was new characters in here, but it was still very much sort of on the same vein as the first one as well, and gave me the vibes that I was wanting carrying on from that. The only criticism I had for this was that it did feel a little bit like a middle book, like you could tell it was setting up for the finale, and I'm very excited for whenever we get that. But I think I said when I read this that on reread this is probably going to be fantastic because I'll have sort of the full trilogy. It's just at the minute I don't want it to sort of leave at this point because I just need more from this universe, and that's not a bad thing. So my next favourite book, my book number 8, is a book series that you've all heard me talk about. You've all heard me talk about how I wasn't expecting to like it, but it is on my favourite books of the year. But I also have read 5 books in this series so far this year, and I had to just pick one to put on this list. So my favourite of the books by Miss Robin Hobb is Royal Assassin, which is the second book in the Farseer trilogy. I have read so far all of the Farseer trilogy and then the first 2 books in the Live Ship Traders, and I much prefer the Farseer trilogy. I just personally really like following Fitz as a character. I know it's not for everyone. I know a lot of people do prefer Live Ships, but I really love Fitz, and I can't wait to sort of jump back into his story with the Tawny trilogy. And this one in particular I really loved, because whilst I enjoyed Assassin's Apprentice, I was still sort of getting to grips with the world, whereas in this one I hit the ground running. I knew exactly where I was with all these characters, and I just really loved it. There's not really much else to say. I haven't given you a synopsis of this, but I think you've probably heard it many times before. It's basically about a character called Fitz, who is the bastard son of the Crown Prince, and he is sort of left on his father's doorstep one day because his maternal grandfather has had enough of pain to raise him, and when he's dropped off, his dad quickly abdicates the throne, so he's kind of left just to be raised by his stable master, who ends up raising him until the king takes an interest, because he realises that he is quite helpful in the way that he can get close to nobility but also be far enough away that he can kind of do a bit more nefarious deeds, hence the title Royal Assassin, because he is trained to be an assassin. And I, like I said, love this series so much. I loved all three of them, but particularly the second book in the series is my favourite. I can't wait to see where Fitz goes next in the Tawny trilogy that I'll be reading next year. On to book number 7 on my list, we have got The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. So I have owned this one for literally years, and I don't know why I put off reading it, because I knew I was going to love it, and I did. It was a 5-star read. All of these were 5-star reads actually, and I really adored this book. It's about a circus. It says circus arrives without warning, no announcements precede it. It is simply there when yesterday it was not. It's a circus that only opens at night. It's about a competition between 2 magicians within this circus. Although I will say that I think one of the reasons why a lot of people don't love this book as much as they think they're going to is that they expect it's going to be this big epic competition, which it kind of is, but also it isn't as well. It's very slow, it's very calm, it's very beautiful and lyrical, which is exactly the type of book and type of writing that I love. So yes, I really love this. I adored the characters, I adored the atmosphere, I adored the writing. I just really love this book, and I'm happy that I bought the special edition, because it's a running theme with me of buying special editions of books when I'm not sure if I'm actually going to like the book. So happy when it works out in my favour. So I did say when I picked Royal Assassin that I was sort of picking one favourite from a series, but these next books, and it is books plural, I couldn't pick a favourite. They're not even in the series, but I just couldn't pick a favourite. So I'm just going to put them on the list combined. So my number 6 pick is House on the Cerulean Sea and Under the Whispering Door by CJ Clune. I read House on the Cerulean Sea early in the year, and I read Under the Whispering Door last month. I love them both. They're both these beautiful whimsical stories, all with kind of found family vibes, and I just love them both. House on the Cerulean Sea is about a social worker who gets sent to go and look at this orphanage for magical children, and when he gets there he kind of ends up falling in love with both the orphanage and also the gentleman who runs it. And then you have Under the Whispering Door, which is about a man who passes away, and basically nobody is really that upset to see him go. He just didn't really have many people that he was close to in life, and he ends up at a way station sort of between life and death, and it's there that he kind of does discover a little bit more about sort of what he was missing out on in life. And I loved both these books. Like I said, they're both just really adorable and really whimsical, and there's not much else to say. I'm sure you've heard many people rave particularly about this one, but I read this one last month and it's possibly my favourite. I'm leaning towards this one at the minute. It could just be that it's because I've read this one more recently, but either way, we love them both. Next up we have what was one of my most anticipated books of the year, so I'm really glad that it is on this list, and that is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I actually expected this to be a lot higher, and to be honest, when I read it, it probably was going to be number 1, and then other things have just come out that have taken over. So this one tells the story of August, who moves to New York City and ends up meeting this girl on the subway train, and she has a bit of a flirtation with her, asks her out on a date, and is really disappointed when she says no, until she realises the reason she said no is that the girl is literally stuck on the subway train. She is from the 1970s, she is stuck there, and they don't really know why, and it is about their relationship. It is about them figuring out why Jane is stuck on the subway. It's about a beautiful found family relationship with August's roommates, and it's just, I love Casey McQuiston's writing so much, and I particularly do love the friendships that she writes. There's a great set of friends in Red, White and Royal Blue as well. Red, White and Royal Blue, for anyone who doesn't know, is one of my all-time favourite books. I've read it about 5-6 times now, I think. I listen to the audiobook whenever I'm just feeling rubbish, to be honest. It's the perfect book when my mental health takes a bit of a nosedive. So I'm really happy that I love this one. I'm really happy that I now have a new book that I can reread many times and not just have to keep going back to Red, White and Royal Blue, although I do want to reread that one again soon, to be honest. So for number 4 on this list, although actually One Last Stop could potentially have been number 4, these two kind of alternate a little bit, but I couldn't not include the latest volume of Heartstopper. Volume 4 came out this year. I love Heartstopper. I've spoken about it many times. It tells the story of Nick and Charlie, who are two boys who meet in form at school, and they end up developing a relationship, and it's just adorable and I love it so much. I don't think I've ever actually met anyone who's read this series who doesn't love it, to be honest. But this is volume 4. It deals with a little bit of a heavier subject matter than the previous ones. It deals a lot with mental health, in particular with eating disorders as well, and I feel like it was handled really well. Like, it didn't go too much into descriptions that it was sort of uncomfortable, but it went into it enough that it took it seriously. It also had a lot of sort of milestones within Nick and Charlie's relationship as well, and yeah, I just feel like it was a really sort of well-rounded story, this one. It had the sad, but it also had the happy, and it ended with the happy as well, so it had some nice moments in there. And I'm really upset that volume 5 is going to be the last one, but I am also happy that I will have the entire series just binge read whenever I want to, hopefully soon. I think it's due, I don't know if it's due out next year, if it's going to come out the year after, but either way, I'll just have to keep rereading volumes 1 to 4 on repeat until it comes out. So book number 3 on this list is actually the first book that I read this year, and I love when the first book that you read actually ends up really high on your favourites list, because I like starting the year off strong if I can. I do have plans for what my first book of next year is going to be, but you will see that in my TBR video next week. So the first book I read this year was Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. Now, I had read Strange the Dreamer a few years ago now, and I'd owned these for many years. I actually picked them up in a charity shop, obviously not this version, but I picked up the regular hardbacks in a charity shop for a really good price. I think it was like £7 for all 3 of them, and I had pre-ordered the second and third Illumicrate version, even though I didn't own this one yet. I had to track this one down afterwards, but I was that adamant that I was going to love this series. But for some reason I'd put it off for many years, despite having owned it since I think 2015. And this year, for some reason, at the beginning of the year, I just went, actually, finally going to read that. It was partly because there was a read along happening, and I'm very happy that I did finally read this, because I really love this series. I have picked the first one to put in this list because I think the first one is still my favourite. I just loved figuring out this world and sort of seeing where it was going. I didn't expect what happened in this book at all, and I just loved how it all sort of unravelled. It is about a character called Karu who lives in Prague. She lives in the human world, but on her evenings after school she works for this demon called Brimstone, and she's basically an errand girl for him, and it's kind of where her little found family, your found family comes up a lot in the books that I like, in case you haven't noticed. But yeah, basically she has this little found family going on with Brimstone and the other people that she works with. But then one day she comes to the door to Brimstone's shop and she can't get in. The doors have been sealed and she doesn't know why. And it's about her sort of trying to get back to that family and trying to figure out what has happened. And then it's about so much more than that, but I can't tell you because massive spoilers. But just read it. It is so good. It gets more and more fantasy as the series goes along. And I really loved that as well, because as somebody who was fairly new to reading fantasy at the time, it really helped to sort of bring me into the story. I got to sort of get my foot in a little bit in the more urban fantasy of the first one before going more full-blown in the second and third, and I need to reread this series because just talking about it now is making me want to read it again. So my top 2 books in this video are going to come as no surprise to anyone who has watched my channel at all since August. August is when this started, but I have mentioned before in videos that I was not sure which order to put these 2 books in. They're 2 books by the same author. I am including them both on this list because they are in completely different series, but I really could not decide which order to put them in. So I had to sort of sit and figure this out before I made this list. But I think this is the order that I've decided on. Subject to change. I mean, ask me on a different day and it might be completely different. But my number 2 book of the year is Empire the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. So I read this one in September. It is the first book in his new series. It is about vampires, basically. It's about a character called Gabe, who is the last Silver Saint, and the Silver Saints are this order whose mission it is to destroy vampires, and he has this sort of legend about him and about how he has defeated this sort of big bad vampire at some point, and at the beginning of the book he has actually been captured by a vampire himself, and he is asked to tell the story of how he got involved in the hunt for the Holy Grail. And basically it is told from multiple timelines, so it's Gabe recounting his story to this vampire about the Holy Grail, but then also about how he trained as a Silver Saint in the first place, and just kind of how his life got to where it is. And what I really particularly loved about this book is Gabe as a character and his sense of humour and the way that the story was told, because it was told as if he was actually sitting down and telling the story and recounting this story to someone. He would kind of interject in moments and just decide, actually no, I don't want to talk about that, and completely flip the timeline and go back to the other part of the story he was telling. And I just loved that. It kept you on your toes a lot. It kept leaving you with little mini cliffhangers throughout the book. And I've said before, I really love J. Kristoff's humour, quite sarcastic, which very much fits my sense of humour as well. So yeah, I just really love this. I didn't think I would love a sort of massive book about vampires, but I did. So very happy that I read it, and was so close to being my #1 book of the year. But that honour, of course, goes to the other J. Kristoff book that I fell in love with this year. I mean, I've read a few actually, but I chose the first one in the series, and I chose the series that we all knew was going to be the top book of the year for me, really, didn't we? It's Nevernight. Of course it is. So I read this one in August. I actually read this one just before Empire the Vampire. I binge read this series in one weekend. I loved it. It's about a character called Mia who's looking to get revenge about things that happened to her family when she was younger, and she joins this school to train to be an assassin. And the first book is all about that sort of training element, and then it goes further into it from there. But I love this. Again, it is that sort of sarcastic humour. This and Empire the Vampire are very similar in ways, but also very different in other ways. And I just loved it. Again, it came down to the characters for me. I also really liked the way that this one was told. This was different. This was done with footnotes for the world building, which was fantastic, especially because I listened to the audiobook as well, which is great because they fit the footnotes in really well. I know some people hate the footnotes. If you do think you're going to struggle with it, I do recommend the audiobook because it helps you figure out when they're supposed to be, and it doesn't sort of break it out of the story as much. It kind of just feels like it's an extra sentence in it. Just a little bit of a tip there. But I really loved this book. I really loved this series, and again, it's one that I just want to reread now I'm talking about it. And also it's another one that I've had on my shelf for absolutely years and I've just got around to picking up. And I think what we're figuring out from some of the favourites on this is that I really just need to go through the backlist on my TBR, because there are so many books that I know I'll love but I just keep putting off, and then when I read them they become all-time favourites. I should really go back and watch the BOOKMAS videos where I just showed my full TBR, shouldn't I? So that is everything. That is my top 10 books of the year. I don't think anyone's surprised, to be honest, by what's on this list, but I'm still happy to have sort of just talked about them all in one place. It is always lovely to talk about things that you love. So that is everything. That is BOOKMAS done. We're back to my regularly scheduled 2 videos a week, which will be a lot less hectic than this, and I'm quite happy about that. I do need a little bit of a break now. But I hope you have enjoyed watching all these many videos. I'm sure you'll be glad to get a little bit of a break from my face as well, to be honest. But I will see you guys next week with a vlog, and I also have my TBR going up. So I'm not going to be leaving you guys alone for too long. Don't worry about that. But thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff down below. Let me know what your favourite books of the year were, and I'll see you guys soon with a new video. Bye!